Awesome, amazing. Good morning, folks, or afternoon or evening from wherever you are. And I am Hellen Vu. You're going to be your facilitator today while helping you craft your personal career journey as you take the next steps beyond YIC's like Summer Innovation Challenge and make it and essentially trying to help discover like how to be more career ready, whether you want to continue studying and or develop your early stage ideas, concepts, and businesses, rather than as something to really think about last minute right before graduation or even after graduation at worst. And so, how we're gonna break today's session down is that we're gonna do a little bit of introductions. Who am I? Who are you? And following that, we're gonna put some pieces together in terms of like how to build your career direction. And then following that, what are some possible next steps to take in order to craft your own personal career journey? So, starting for introductions. My name is Helen. Just to reiterate, I'm currently based in Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, Quebec, and I am YC's summer events coordinator for this year. And before then, I've had experience with like career development by supporting like students at the university I attended to with like going through their CVs, going through the cover letters, helping with interview prep, right? Along with like social innovation and program planning through like different activities, whether it be as like part of my university's like innovation lab or program planning through like different activities that I've done during my university studies. And so I wanted to pass it back to you folks to if you want, if you'd like to write it down or open unmute your mic, feel free to share your name, any pronouns, and perhaps answer the question. So when you hear the word career readiness, what comes to your mind? Yeah, she thanks you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Helen. And first of all, I just appreciate that. I've been really looking forward to this workshop. I was sharing a little bit before the call that, yeah, I'm excited to learn from this too. Kind of exploring, especially in the fall, like further professional opportunities and things. And so this is going to be very timely as well. So, yeah, my name's Shatang Shu, pronounced he, him, his. And when it comes to career readiness, I think maybe the thing that I think about is how prepared are you to take whatever um, skills and experiences you may have kind of developed through the years and kind of be able to turn it into a meaningful career. I will say career means a lot of different things, a lot of different people. So it could be like getting a job and whatnot, but I think it could equally be just putting yourself in a position where you are doing something that is meaningful to you, but then also allowing you to sustain yourself in some way, right? So like, no one needs to be rich or anything, but just even just positioning yourself. So ultimately, yeah, you're doing something meaningful, but then also you can sustain yourself. So I guess that's what career readiness means to me.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for sharing, Jitangshu. Like career readiness, honestly, that's something I really resonate with, especially as like I'm coming from someone who's actually recently graduated from Concordia University. And when I say recently, I mean like literally what, like spring 2026 with a bachelor's in like human relations. So finding something that's like purposeful, I would say, but also ensuring that like you be able to keep like that's sustainable to keep a roof over your head, right? Without not necessarily being like super rich. That can really go through a long way, personally speaking. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing, guys. And if anything, um, if anything, let's move on to the next section then. So yeah, essentially, like, why is it important to plan your career now? So you mentioned it briefly, Shitangsha, that like helping to kind of like develop a sense of purpose, because like personally during my undergrad, I've done a lot of a big variety of like different activities without like a certain direction in mind. And well, for me, it was pretty cool to like try out different things, but it didn't necessarily like align in my personal career journey in that way. So being able to kind of like find, just be able to take a more purposeful, intentional approach to your own career to find something that's like fulfilling, um, while also being sustainable to it, and while meeting any like goals or passions that you have is really, really important. Um, and it's also very important to be like to learn how to plan your career, especially to get more motivation. If you're more intentionally, you're more aligned with those goals that you're set out to do. I find that like it really helps give a bolster your sense of self, give you a big shot of motivation in order to like overcome like those challenges when they come up, whether it be like through studying, uh, through these different jobs or activities that you're doing. They're all like all of these activities and challenges are purposeful in order to get to where you want to. And more importantly, um, is also being able to understand like what do employers look for? Because if you do these jobs or do these tasks, but like they're not exactly what potential investors and or employers look for, right? Then it's going to be really hard to try to repivot in order to get to those opportunities. Now, how do you try to make sense of who you are, what you want to do, and how do you get there, right? And sometimes it might be a bit difficult to do so at first. It's not necessarily like there's no necessarily like one and done way of approaching career direction. However, what I'm going to be showing you is a proposal, one way of approaching a more of self-exploration, let's say, in order to figure out like, well, what do you need to do, or what would you want to do down the line? So in terms of like how you would lay out the groundwork for your career, so with this Venn diagram, to better describe it for people who are who are listening to this on the side, on one circle is thinking, what am I good at doing? To the right side of that Venn diagram is what do I enjoy doing? And then the third consideration, the third circle, that's overlapping with the other two circles, is what will others pay me for? So I would say, if you can, pick out a pencil, prepare like a notebook, or find something to write or type in, and we're and we're gonna be trying to do this little exercise during this workshop. Give you folks like a few seconds in order to like readjust yourselves in order to like start writing. In fact, I'll probably just have my tablet open to also be part of the workshop as well. Let me just prop that on the side. Okay. So as we go through taking down notes to better answer those questions, be as specific as possible. If you end up writing something that's like general, that's fine for now. Just keep in mind that like the more specific you are, the better, because this is about you, not me, right? I'm not telling you how to write your life or how to write your career direction. it is you who will be benefiting from this. So, without further ado, let's get into how to start with listing what am I good at doing, or what are you good at doing? So, here are some like questions to kind of like help jog your brain to better specify like those skills, those strengths, those experiences that help you tell you what are you good at doing. So like what are you good at? What do you get complimented for? So for what are your strengths? Maybe your superpowers. And if you're to ask others what you're good at, what would they say? So if you want, you could write like different activities, skills, or experiences, or even like aha moments in your life where somehow it just might align with one of these bullet points. And if you want, I'll take like a few seconds to like give a moment of silence in order to like and list some of these skills, experiences down and opportunities. And if you'd like, you feel free to mention anything in the chat or unmute yourself and share it with the crowd. Hmm. I've definitely gotten the chance to write a few things. Would anyone be interested in sharing anything that they thought about so far? If not, that's perfectly fine. Yes, Jess.
I think, I guess one question, when you say strengths and superpowers, is it necessarily just professional? Is it like outside of work, strengths and superpowers?
Yeah, honestly, perfectly valid question. So it doesn't necessarily need to be professional per se. I mean, ideally, I mean, I guess in a way, ideally it can be professional, but like sometimes like hobbies in a way may have like some cool overlap with what you may want to do as like a future entrepreneurship endeavor, right? So, right, honestly, just write whatever really comes up in your mind.
I might have potentially a couple points for the second one, if it's okay to share. I can't words today.
Go
But
ahead.
I'll say sometimes people will say organizing is my superpower. So whether it is in games with friends or coordinating plans with people. But the flip side of that is if you were to say to me, okay, I need you to organize furniture for a room, I would probably put a chair and a table and then some sort of lamp. But that's the extent of it. And I think that also correlates to like tech-based things as well. Whether some people nickname me the spreadsheet girl, despite my interesting back and forth tug of war with Excel, in the sense of, uh, yeah. But I think, I guess one other point someone say is I, according to friends, have a more calming voice, and that I guess, has a correlation with being able to sometimes have the calls that have more sensitive topics or subject matter, or keeping things from escalating. So I think those would probably be some of the things. Still working on kind of accepting some of the last one, but yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that's pretty amazing, and I love to. This for me, I find it funny that like even if you claim that like you're not as familiar with his for spreadsheet, the name has to come from somewhere, right?
I'll say Excel and me have complicated relationship in the sense of like I don't like Excel, but I recognize that some people's I've seen people do amazing, incredible things with it, and that's always fascinating. But I love hearing what people's kind of strengths and things are. So
Yeah, no, honestly, well, props to you, Jess, and thank you so much for sharing. And would anyone else like to share as well? Just before we move to the next section. And of course, like feel free to kind of like t take the time to like write down some of the answers too, because yeah, nitty.
Yeah, I'll definitely go. I would say something that I think I'm good at is things like reading and writing. Like I'm very good with like those kind of I guess quieter tasks. So I'm also able to like I guess something that when people say that I'm good at is I'm able to get tasks done, I think fairly fast. Like I'm able to like I guess start things. And also like Jess said earlier, I'm also good with organizing. Like planning out tasks and stuff, and I like starting things, I guess, as soon as possible. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like in to try to paraphrase what you to try to paraphrase what you mentioned, like organizing, writing, getting things done
Mm-hmm.
as soon as reasonably possible, right? Those are really good skills to have moving forward, right? Regardless of
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to be. Like, I guess the better way to phrase it is that like they are transferable skills that you could bring
Mm-hmm.
to many workplaces or many like endeavors that you want to do in the future. So, quite frankly, amazing, and I hope you keep developing on those, and I
Mm-hmm.
really hope you get recognized for those. Hmm. So I'll take one more. Yeah, she thanks you.
Sure, yeah, I I probably should ask you folks what you folks think I may or may not be good at. I think others can often be really good at kind of reflecting on even better, where you may have your strengths and whatnot. I do think a couple things which I feel particularly proud of. Is one is I feel like I'm good in pressure situations where like if things hit the rock, so to speak. I actually kind of chuckle a little bit. It's like, okay, you know what? Roll up our sleeves and let's figure this out. And that can be good. It can be a bit of a challenge though, where this does mean that sometimes I leave things last minute and I kind of just because I'm like, oh, I know if it's going to work out in some way or the other. But so that might be a strength and is just this kind of sense of being able to do well in high pressure situations. And I'll say as another kind of thing is probably just yeah, when there's many different perspectives, kind of figuring out a way that they can come together in some kind of coherent way where ultimately you're listening to everyone a little bit, right? So it might not be a firm position on one side or the other, but ultimately, it's one that reflects different perspectives of different things. So yes, I think those would probably be my couple things. But
Well,
others can tell me better if I'm accurate or not.
well, there's definitely a lot of room for like personal development, quite frankly, and and I guess also taking the time and space to be able to talk those out, right? Which we're not going to do here. But at the moment, that is something that we could consider doing at some point in time. And if you ever want to, just like sit down, think and just like discuss in terms of like potential, like what's going well, what could be improved and whatnot. So if you would like when it comes to like, feel free to like reach out to anyone who you want to ask this to, and perhaps I could help with self-reflection in the future. So, all in all, let's move past what you're good at doing, and we could then cover, well, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing most in your spare time? What would you love to learn more about or spend more time exploring? And where are you and what are you doing when you feel great, elated, inspired, energized? Definitely take the time to like, if you want, write those questions, ask any questions, write any of those like any kind of like skills, words, or if you also want to express artistically speaking on your own side of things with pictures or drawings, open to that too. I'm not going to check your homework, right? This is more for you and not for me. So I'll take the moment to let you all write things down and we'll reconverge in about like 30 seconds. All right. I'll be opening the floor to anyone who would like to share, whether it be in text or raising their hand. Yeah, Nitty.
I think, especially to answer the last one, traveling is a big one for me. I always feel good when I travel and like explore new places. And I also really enjoy any type of design. So like graphic design or like also like product design and things like that. And in my spare time, I really like to read. So I guess something that like ideally combines all those things. So like reading and traveling and design maybe. But yeah, and I would also like to spend more time like I also like I guess researching things. I have a lot of like interests across like a variety of things, so I don't focus on like one field or one topic. Whatever is interesting, I'll just read about it. So yeah.
Yeah. And quite frankly, variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great actually. And I would love to travel more, but I'm just limited by my budget, you know?
Yeah, that's really fair.
Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for sharing that. And it's funny you mentioned that like if you could let you express wanting to find something that could combine all that. Keep that with you. In fact, it's okay if there's any like overlap between like some of the sections that we do go over, right? That's just don't worry about that. Yeah. Anyone else before we move forward? Yeah, she thanks you.
I guess I'll reflect. I'm very passionate about ways that we can create community-centered change where it's not just like a top-down, this is what you know, government says you should do, but actually like people in community who are kind of creating change in different ways, and so like exploring one thing I enjoy is like exploring strategies to do that. I'm also concerned about the ways that different systems kind of impact the world and then create inequities and differences in quality of life. And so I think something that I enjoy doing is also kind of like learning more about those and then kind of thinking about, hey, you know what, how do we maybe create a new world in different ways, right? Or, you know, like are there ways that we can kind of challenge it as much as it is also very difficult to think about how to even change things which seem very what's the word? It's scary. It's intimidating to change. Where are you and what are you doing when you feel great? Yeah, I think interestingly, maybe in two situations. One is I feel when I'm out in nature alone specifically. It can have a very calming effect, and I just find that it's there's a even just going for a walk, right? It can really do something. It doesn't even have to be nature. It can just be, you know. But so sometimes, and then equally, there are certain times when you are with the right set of people, and you just get this energy from doing something together as a community, and then that has a special feeling as well. So I'll say two very extreme like opposites. Sometimes that alone time of reflection, but also community time centered on action. There are probably two times when I feel particularly great, and I reflect back. I'm like, yeah, you know, that's really cool, and yeah, 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 it's a connection with people is very meaningful, even if it's just one person. Like the one or two people, it can really uh be valuable and with yourself.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I mean, those are very valid like values too, right? Especially when you have to balance between like, hey, you want to think and challenge like change. I think and challenge like how change is approached on like an organizational level or even like a systemic level, right? There's a lot to work with, but also wanted to make sure that I like to take the time to self-reflect, take the time to walk, whether it be in nature, right? Some I suppose like something that's been an interesting uh, facilitation method is called a nature walk. Whether it be guided or not, from what I recall, right, it's it's as you mentioned in Ishitangshu that like taking the time to walk, whether it be like in your nearby neighborhood or just going to a nearby park or whatever like fancy whatever you're fancying, right? And taking the time to like take note of what's around you and see it like not necessarily just like write how you would change things, but like being familiar with like your surroundings, if not noticing things that may or may not have been there, really changes things, honestly, in terms of perspective. So I'll actually try to find research and information on like the nature walk, but it's definitely something I would love to definitely share after the workshop as like a link amongst many things, of course. But yeah, in consideration of like time as well, right? Um, we'll be moving forward towards the third section of this lovely Venn diagram, which is what will others pay me for, right? Like, where would you see yourself, or where would you see a need for a product or service that others might be willing to pay for? This is something that like I'm sure many YC participants and teams had to like think about when writing about their idea, concept, or product or service for the competition. So now you're gonna have to put this rather than trying to sell your product or service, but rather focusing more of yourself, right? What problems have you identified that you yourself could potentially address? And from talking with other people around you, what have you heard that has been identified as like an unmet need or gap in the services? So I'll give another 30 seconds for you all to think about these questions, take notes for yourself, and preferably taking notes for yourself. And let's converge back at the 30-second mark. Yeah. So if anyone would like to share, text, Mike, feel free to do so, and we could do quickly go around. Admittedly, this might be a bit more of a difficult one to take more time thinking about, especially when it could get very, very long. So perhaps I'll briefly chime in just to give a little bit of an idea for what would others pay me, Helen, for. So I myself noticed that there has been quite like I guess there's been like an increasing need for job search support, career support in general, where where some of the students in the department that I was a part of, the Department of Applied Human Sciences, were struggling to figure out, well, what can I do with my degree after graduating in the Department of Applied Human Sciences? So noticing that I quickly like asked like some students, some of like the faculty members, staff members in my department while I was part of the student association at the time. And that's often a question that really does come up a lot, especially when it comes after you spend at least like 3 years in university where you're focusing on your studies. So how can you translate that to the real world? So I thought, hey, perhaps one way to kind of address that for me is compiling a list of like job opportunities from around the island of Jojage, of Montreal, just to see like, hey, here are some potential like job titles that students at a department could look at. So, for example, like some might be interested in like human resources associate or human resources assistant. Some might be more interested in research assistant roles if they ever wanted to pursue grad studies, specifically in like the domain of like social sciences or in the domain of like recreation and leisure, right? Since the students from that department were very varied, honestly. It was honestly a mishmash of like two different departments, hence why it's called applied human sciences. But I'm not going to get too much in detail of like the different degrees that you can get from the departments. Some students might were also interested in change management consulting. So I essentially, for like the past few years and still now, I've been sharing through LinkedIn, like, hey, here are these amazing job postings that you folks can apply to. And if it were, and of course, like you're all open to like apply, chat with like someone who has worked in the company or even like career services offered through like different university or college services and even employment centers that do exist in the city in itself. Or if if you are living remotely too, right? Then there are also online services that do offer career support. So in short, career exploration and supporting with career management is something that I've been really passionate about, and people will pay me for it. In fact, people have reached out to me asking, "Hey, would you be interested in becoming a human resources lead in the future?" I'm like, maybe it could be interesting. Not in my current path right now, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else wanted to share or reflect on that. Yes, thank you.
So I'll reflect. I feel very grateful that it's taken a journey, but even YC in some ways and being able to kind of be a part of the organization does kind of yeah, it is a product or service that young people need, and which I've been fortunate to make get some compensation for as well. In particular, I mean, reflecting on the earlier kind of notes there, it is something that often puts you in high pressure situations where you have to make those calls, and it is something which often requires you to explore compromise in different ways, where you have different perspectives and different people kind of expressing different things, and so like or just like advocating for different things, and you have to find a kind of a fair approach. So it really challenges kind of those questions of, what is ultimately fair. And then those are questions that I enjoy challenging myself around, and then especially with a team kind of exploring. And then equally, it addresses that passion of, how do you get community to be the authors of change? And then at the same time, explore systems change to an extent. I think that's one thing maybe over time, I would still love to push the envelope around how you can explore systems change in the youth innovation space even further. But yeah, I think there's so I feel grateful that I'm doing some work that is what I want to do. I will say a challenge that I do sometimes have is having many interests. And I had a career counselor once advised that I have one of the most eclectic resumes I've ever seen in their career, and I've done a little bit of everything because and so maybe that's one thing perhaps is there's so many gaps and needs, and there's so many different passions, and then ultimately, how do you navigate all those different things that you want to have an opportunity to touch or just make an impact on in some way. But yeah, cool. So I guess that's my answer. And then I just want to say, Helen, like you're so talented in multiple ways, and whether it's HR or so many other things, I know, you're going to be doing some incredible things. So thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Shitangshu, first and foremost. And it's funny you mentioned about seeing a career counselor about that, because that's also one of those issues the challenges that does come up in my day-to-day life. And I had to literally like visit the career counselors at Concordia asking, I have too many things I'm interested in dabbling in. I need to narrow this down. And something that really stood out to me in that conversation, honestly, was that like you don't necessarily have to stick with the same thing forever, right? Like even now, one thing that he has posed to me and himself is that like, is this something I want to keep doing 5 years down the line? Could be something different, honestly. While I'm not going to get too much into the job market part. That's a whole different other issue. Um, but quite frankly, interests change, people change. You're not the same person that you were yesterday. So it's important by the end of the day to make sure that like, well, being able to self-sustain so that like if you want to make a transition, you still have like an infrastructure and funding and support for yourself in order to be able to like transition. And of course, I always recommend going to meet a career counselor. Which career counselor? Don't that I can't help you with, but that in itself is a journey to explore to see which kind of like counselor works best with you because everyone's needs are different. Everyone's interests they change over time. So just I would say, in short, be open and experimental with different paths, provided you have the support to be able to do so, let's say. Um, which is to transition to the next part actually of like, well, considering like these different like skills, experiences, like awesome things that you folks have all pointed out, right? Are there any recurring themes or ideas that come from them? Or perhaps that like there are some commonalities between what you've talked about. And when you consider those and trying to find the overlap between all that, um, to borrow the term from an author, that you could consider yourself as like a sweet spot to of something you may be interested, might want to look out for in pursuing as potential career journey. I'm not gonna not gonna go over with everyone in terms of like what that sweet spot would look like for you as in consideration of time. Also, it can be very lengthy, but something to take with you moving forward while trying to fill out this Venn diagram of what am I good at doing, what do I enjoy doing, and what will others pay me for, is that these are like this would help you with like creating your own career journey as like you try to be more focused on how you approach your different strategies and tactics in order to get to where you want in the future. So with that leads to the question of like, okay, so I found this sweet spot after debating with myself for like hours, days, weeks, months. What do I do next? Right? What are those next steps? So, in terms of like potential career options, right? One of the important part is doing that research. So, when I say doing that research, that can mean so many things. So, for example, like, okay, so I have the like different skills, different interests that like are cool. Okay, how do I combine them together? Well, I guess in one way you could always prompt these idea onto ChatGPT, Claude, what have you. Like, hey, this these are the skills. This is what I'm good at. This is what I do enjoy doing. This is what others will pay me for. Can you help draft some job titles and responsibilities that combine these three aspects, right? And depending on like the results that do turn out from that, from the response, consider exploring like different like associations, job titles, job search websites, or even different industries that those job titles and or industries do pop up, right? And in fact, I find it really important to analyze those job market trends because like as much as that like I'm interested in doing I'm very like good at doing one thing and enjoy doing the other thing. If it turns out that like it's not exactly for the lack of a better word employable, that doesn't necessarily fulfill like what others would pay you for, right? Not as sustainable in the long term in terms of trying to keep that roof over your head. So it's important to be familiar with what's out there. um, Also, it's important to, if you can, and this is not necessarily an easy step for us folks who may have social anxiety, is meeting someone in a role, industry, or a company that you're interested in. Now, personally, I use LinkedIn to connect with folks who may be interesting to me. And to me, I try to find through like through searching online. So honestly, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of like demonstrate of what I mean by how do I find this person in question, right? So let's say I go on Google or I go on LinkedIn, what have you. Let's say I'm interested in trying to find someone who's doing social impact consulting in Montreal, let's say in Montreal, and then I also end that search with um I end up with that search on LinkedIn just to mention specify LinkedIn, right? of- well, first results end up being more of like, hey, here's some like different social impact jobs, social responsibility jobs. But as you go further down, you see like different individuals' names that do pop up saying, hey, Annie, they're a impact social consultant at RSE. And you could open the link on the side and you'll be able to see their profile provided you are signed in LinkedIn. First and foremost, you have to be signed in LinkedIn. Otherwise, it will give you a lot of blurred images and text. It won't let you read their entire profile. But as you look through their profile, you want to take a look at like, hey, what is the role? What is, how did they introduce themselves in the about section? What are those posts that what are the posts that do if they are active, if you're that curious, right? And as well as like seeing their different experiences that they've had over how many years, right? I'm not gonna go into looking into this person's profile, but essentially, even on LinkedIn, you could kind of do similarly by putting in those keywords, social impact consultant, Montreal, and LinkedIn will sort it by like jobs, posts, people, which the important part is people as a whole. You could also, the keywords can also include like, job titles, the sector that you're interested in, the location in which that you're interested in trying to find an opportunity in, and or even those interests or companies that you want to look at. Um, yeah, so that's essentially quickly navigating LinkedIn, right? And you might ask, well, hey, wait a second, okay, like I'm gonna connect, like I connected with this person. How do I reach out to them in order to set up like an information interview and or a coffee chat to learn more about what they do professionally? Well, here's a very quick template in terms of trying to reach out to someone through through LinkedIn, ideally after you've connected with them, right? Hi, person. I hope you're doing well. I'm exploring, let's say, like social impact consulting in the nonprofit industry, and I noticed that you're working in this cool company called Phil, where you work as like where you support nonprofit and social sectors with trying to improve their to best support their mission and improve their reach. Would you be able for a quick 15-minute chat in the next few weeks? Very important because you want to specify how much time it would take and ideally short as reasonably possible to be able to learn more about them and tell them about why you're reaching out to them in the first place. Like, I would love to learn how you got involved in insert this topic that you're really curious about. And of course, many of us folks can get really busy, so it's important to mention that you're grateful for the potential opportunity and for any time, any guidance that they can offer. Thank you, and finish that message with her name. Now, there's a distinct possibility that, well, maybe this person might not respond immediately or respond at all. That's okay. By that, I mean it's not great, but that is honestly the reality that we live in because, quite frankly, we have lives, right? And y'all have different things to do, different priorities. And if anyone does respond, honestly, it's very fruitful knowing that like someone's out there being willing to support you. And many folks, including like myself, and I've mentioned Shitangshi here due to a conversation we've had in the past, had very recently, where we're very happy and interested in being sharing our experiences and interests to whoever reaches out to us, right? It's also important to be considerate of the other person as other on the other side of the screen of hey, like how would they respond to someone who wanted to reach out to them for advice? I myself, very grateful, but would be happy to take the time to talk. I just need to find a time and availability in my busy schedule in the coming weeks. So, with this draft template, very handy, very short and straight to the point, and also being personalized in order to try to write something and convey that you really want to learn more about the role, the industry, or anything related to interests and seeing how someone else got there. And if you can, don't just limit it to one person. Try to see if you could reach out to multiple people, as quite frankly, there are so many ways to navigate the industry or the roles or the companies that you're looking for. It's just a matter of seeing how different people experience it and realizing the time. We'll quickly go over about like, okay, so I reached out to them. What do I do afterwards, right? What do I do with this information now that I compiled all this research? Well, this is where you're gonna have to take action after self-exploring and doing the research, whether it be like experimenting if possible, right? I do recognize that sometimes, life obligations, work obligations may be a blocker for opportunities. But sometimes there's like micro activities, volunteering, club involvement, internships, and or apprenticeships, or any kind of like equivalent to gaining like work volunteering experiences that could really help you with developing those skills you might need in order to get to the role that you're looking for in the future. Or perhaps if you're interested in different ways of meeting professional folks, right? Or developing different skills, you're always welcome to attend workshops, whether it be like from YIC or from your university, college, high school, what have you, or even from external organizations offering ideally free workshops. But sometimes those workshops will be paid and sometimes you get food from them. Depends, right? There's also career fairs, networking events, or even conferences that are actually hosted in different educational institutions. Or sometimes some are hosted externally, in which case, well, how do you get to attend those events? If you have time, of course. One tip I would love to offer is if you can briefly volunteer just to be able to pay for the pass. Honestly, very well, not as expensive in terms of like cost wise. I would say it'd be a very interesting experience to have not only have on your resume to say, hey, you volunteered at this conference or event, but it's also a different way to meet professionals and meet people just to see what they're like outside of their respective like panel or respective outside of their respective events, etc. Because quite frankly, it's v- I'd say it's very easy. It's much easier, sorry, to be able to reach out to them that way while you support them with setting up with said panel or workshop, right? And if you're still in school, if you can, try to find and take those relevant courses to like the careers that you're interested in. Like Nidhi, you mentioned about like writing. So maybe if you ever wanted to turn it into like a professional writing career, right? Maybe there might be some classes at your school for that, or marketing, or even sometimes there might also be like courses specific for like letting you do projects or letting you do capstone, right? If if you get the opportunity to reach out to an academic advisor for your department, um, definitely do recommend asking them, hey, what courses have projects or what courses have like interesting opportunities to develop these skills and experiences that I'm looking for? Because when you write your resume, later down the line, it can definitely be an interesting experience to highlight, or even micro credentials, just to say, hey, this is one way to showcase that. Like I've learned Excel in a different capacity, right? And all this to say, there's so many ways of like approaching professional development. There's some ways to make it more free, but of course, I do recognize that like there may be barriers to participation. And if anything, if possible, depending on the organization or the school you are attending to, if possible, I highly recommend reaching out to the organizers to see is there a way to, is there a barrier-free option in order to participate in those like activities, in those workshops, those conferences, because being able to um, attend and be there would really help with not only getting to know people, but also developing those skills and experiences that you need in order to flourish professionally and personally, of course, right? So, all in all, um, any questions, thoughts, feedbacks, or one takeaway that you have coming from this workshop? Yeah, she thanks you.
Yeah, I just want to reflect on. I really like two of the points you made in the earlier slide here. So one around this kind of this idea of volunteering, and it can be such a. I mean, even the job I have at YC, I didn't necessarily do youth innovation organizing work, except I had run the Climate Change Makers Challenge in 1 year, and then one of the participants actually recommended me for the lead coordinator role after they saw me in that role, and they were asked, "Hey, one of the YIC alumni who also participated with, and they were initially going to take on the coordinator role, and they weren't able to take it, and they said you should look at this person instead." I was a volunteer there, it directly led to my job here, where I was able to explore some interests, also able to explore environmental interests without necessarily investing into a full degree or anything, and ultimately explore certain interests in a certain way. I want to recognize it as a privilege to volunteer, and not everyone necessarily has the ability to kind of give that time. But whether it's volunteering or part-time work, or just doing things where you're in the, I'll say, periphery of like of the actual organizing, it can be very valuable. Sorry, the periphery of the job you're thinking, or the area you're exploring, that can be valuable to at least explore that. Maybe you're not leading the organization, but you're doing something to at least kind of dip your toes into it in some way. I really like also your point about can you share a last slide, Helen? There's something that you shared there that I really liked. Uh, yes. Yeah, this one. Yeah, the idea of network. Yeah, just ask for help. Like, it's one of those things where at YC, to be fair, we don't necessarily advertise it as much as we should, but we have a budget for equity related supports. People just need to ask, and we will find ways to get you involved in case cost or anything else is a barrier. So just ask. There oftentimes are ways across almost every organization I've been a part of, where there are ways for you to get involved, either discount or with some kind of subsidy or scholarship or some way in case there are barriers. So I really like the point of just asking things. But yeah, I really appreciate this, Helen. Just wonderful tips and advice, and yeah, I loved the diagram as well. And that's maybe a takeaway, is just that diagram. It connects with a concept kintsugi, which is shared in one of our earlier workshops, but you really delved into it at a different level, and so that's something I'm going to keep in mind. So thank you, Helen. This was great. Appreciate you.
Th- Thank you, Shitangshu. And I guess to bring it back to said earlier workshop, because I do actually remember the Ikigai framework, actually. Um, yeah, because I have seen quite a few like different career exploration activities and frameworks using like a similar Ikigai framework. I don't remember exactly what that fourth circle was about. But oh yeah, what the world needs. Okay, yeah. I think that's what the world needs. That part puts more, I suppose, more emphasis in terms of like not only values but also a lot. I suppose that also requires like a lot more research regarding like I guess going back to the labor market research, right? Like what does the world need? What is the news going around? What do people ask for, right? Um, that to me has its importance, I guess, for this purpose of this workshop is excluded mainly because to focus on like three things. And if you have the opportunity to cover that, that would be something amazing to bring up. But for the time being, I'd say Ika is very relevant, say on the personal level, but also on a professional slash career level. So, if anything, would be able to find in as part of like YC resources, especially in the description of the video. Remember to share some information or some links whether it be like on the job bank or a little on the job bank, on job market trends in Canada, right? As well as like some potential avenues for like job search, for job search sites, especially for like social sector or nonprofit sectors, as well as like sharing the information about nature walk, because that is still something that's worth exploring in your own time, provided you do have the time, right? And otherwise, I hope you folks have a great rest of your day, rest of your evening, and I hope to connect with you soon, whether it be through LinkedIn or through any future events. Ciao.